Alright, you guys are lucky. This is a double feature. I'm doing 2 and 3 because I'm lazy and I forgot to record 2 before I did 3. So we're getting both 2 and 3. Got all that? Okay, good. So last night and the week before we played D&D. What happened? Very good question. Last well, we'll go over what happened the week before and then we'll go over what happened last night because that is how chronology working. You all are adapted to that way of viewing time. Where do we start? We start with last week, where the party had just stumbled upon Thomas, the captured human, up in the top of the house of his old manor house in the town of Saltmarsh, which I've converted into the town of Durstburg. And the party has found Thomas, and he's secretly an assassin who works for the local governor. And the party doesn't know this yet. So they question Thomas a bit. They're like, Thomas, where did you get knocked out? As Thomas had been in this room with a big old bump on his head, and Thomas was polite enough to show them, I got knocked out here in the kitchen. And so the party investigates the kitchen a little bit, and they sat there for a while, and they figured that Thomas got hit on the head, and that means whatever hit Thomas on the head must have come from the kitchen. They tear the kitchen apart, and they can't find anything, and that's because the stairs that go downstairs to where the culprit was and came from were in the next room over. They came up the stairs, they opened the door, they're like, oh, there's a guy in here. Bonk is the story they sort of set up. It didn't actually happen though. So I don't know why I walked through all of that logic in my head. It didn't actually happen. So the party investigates, finally, the stairs, and they go downstairs into the cellar, and the illusionist, the enemy illusionist, not the party's illusionist, the enemy illusionist had sort of planned for people to try and break in, and he set up all of these traps, these magic mouth traps. So whenever you step on certain stairs or whenever you pass a certain, basically invisible magical tripwires that make a sound effect. And so they went downstairs and they heard this awful, horrible scream, and they're all like, "Pah! Who cares? We don't give a single flying slice of bologna about anything about screaming damsels." Let's see. What does it smell like in here? It smells terrible. It smells like dying, dead, dying, death, dying. They go downstairs. It smells terrible. They open a big box. They find a corpse. The barbarian goes to touch the corpse, and they get a bug on their hand. And it's a grub that's like, it's basically like leech suctioned itself to their hand. It's going and it's burrowing into their hand, and they're like, oh shit, oh fuck, oh god. And so they take the lantern they have, and the barbarian just kind of plunges his hand into the fire. Because I was like, you can try and dig it out. You might end up, severing an artery, though. You're not a surgeon. And this is not an action hero game. This is sort of simulationist. I don't like the connotation that simulationist game brings with it when we talk about role-playing games, because I feel like that puts unfair pressure on your referee. I feel like it puts unfair pressure on the players. I think it saps a lot of the fun out of the game. Children are not playing games of imagination and pretending to do their taxes. Barbarian plunges their hand into the fire, and they take some damage from that. I think they only take like 2 points of damage. They take a point from the fire, they take a point from the grub burrowing into their hand, and they're able to get it out. And the party is like, that's fucking weird. Anyway, next, they continue to go through this room. They search it, and they find the secret door. And at this point, Thomas is freaking the fuck out. He's like, oh god, they found the secret door. What are they going to do? And there was originally supposed to be a bandit in the next room, and I fucked this up. I fucked it up, and it would have been much, much better if they went into that room, that bandit was there, and then they had this standoff where, can we kill the bandit before the bandit goes and alerts the other bad guys? But I had thought the bandit probably can hear the barbarian screaming because their hand is in fire and there's grubs on him and ew, gross, whatever he's yelling. The bandit can probably hear that. He's going to go get the bad guys. And then I realized they're going to die if I go do that. I can't have him go get the rest of the dungeon because there's like so much is such a strange adventure because it just parts of it just don't make sense because it's not designed like an AD&D adventure. There is so little treasure in that adventure. Like you'll eventually hear about this after the third session that was last night. But the party divided up all the treasure that they found. They didn't level up, not once. There was less than 10,000 gold pieces of treasure in there, which is baffling. But it's a good thing that I've set up a plot thread. We'll see what else everybody wants to go do, but I've set up a plot thread. At this point, Thomas is really freaking out. So while the rest of the party is checking out a study, Thomas takes the illusionist James aside and puts him in a headlock, and he's like, "Call for your friends." And he has a knife to his throat, and he's like, you guys should get the fuck out of here before you get way too in over your heads. And if the party could talk to Thomas now, they would probably be laughing at him, because they did really well in the fight against everybody else, and it was on part from good preparation and the fact that they rolled really well, and the enemies rolled really, really poorly. The party fights Thomas, and in this fight, one of the goblins, whom Lydia cannot communicate with at all. They don't have a common language, nothing like that. She's trying to communicate to the goblin, "Hey, do this thing," and the goblin gets confused, throws a sling stone at her head with his sling, and Lydia unfortunately dies. They take quite a bit of damage from that sling stone, and they pass away. And Summer, who was playing Lydia, was very upset, and I was like, "Hey, make a new character. We'll get them in as soon as we possibly can." And they were cool with that. They were like, "I wanna play an elf. I want to still play a druid, and this is going to be Lydia's adopted sister, whom Summer then immediately named Lilia." So there was, especially last night, there was a lot of confusion in which I'm trying to remember Lydia versus Lilia, who's alive, who's dead. They're both related, but I think we figured it out. So Lydia's dead, Lilia's alive, Lilia's an elf, Lydia's a halfling. Both are druids, both have the spell Entangle. There was an excellent moment where, there have been multiple excellent moments where Summer, playing a druid, has cast Entangle, and it's basically shut down half of or the entire encounter, because they can't move if they fail their save, and spell saves are fairly high for low hit dice creatures. So Summer has been killing it, casting Entangle, and they got their new character integrated, and their new character is a elf. They can speak Goblin, so they've made friends with the goblins, and so Summer's gotten to keep their retainers, and recover a bit of their stuff, and they're only maybe 30-40 experience points behind at that point. The party, after mourning the loss of Lydia and kind of looking into Thomas a little bit, they find another secret door, and they're like, "Okay, we'll go through that secret door next session. Let's go back to town and we can figure out what the hell we're going to do. We can get some hirelings to help us, because Lilia has been deeper into the dungeon, and they have seen that there are gnolls and there's a ton of humans in there that can be a huge threat, especially if they have gnolls up in the front protecting them. But luckily, and they were fairly smart to do this, they go back to town, and that's where we ended for last week. Last night, we kind of went one by one down the party, and had everybody kind of do some downtime activities. Some people wanted to find hirelings, some people wanted to get armor resized for them, things like that, as they had ended up burning the crate with all the grubs in it, and they stole the armor off of the guy, and it turns out it was magical armor. And they then went to one of the local blacksmiths, as I forgot that I had made a blacksmith, and so I made up a different blacksmith on the fly, and I'm like, well, now I have two blacksmiths, because both of these characters are very different. They get the armor resized, and that was a really fun moment for Corbin playing the Dragon Knight, as he got to roleplay with this guy, the blacksmith, who who really respects the Dragon Knights and as a source of good and justice that desperately needs to come back. And if I had used the other blacksmith, I think I would have had a very different experience. As the other blacksmith he's a half orc, and the half orcs they worked for the bad guys. They were created by the bad guys to take over this place. Corbin got to roleplay with this guy and regale them with stories of his knighthood and things like that, which he had a lot of fun with. Next, the barbarian Grand, played by my friend Drag, he went and met the mayor of the town and sort of made a deal with them, as the mayor wanted to hire him to go figure out why the barbarians are raiding Durstburg. And he was like, well, I can go talk to them. I can't like guarantee. There's like, it's like tribal internecine shit. Like I can't go just like eradicate these guys, but I can go talk to them and they'll respect me. And she was like, okay, cool, we'll be in touch. Lilia, Summer's new character, went and found some hirelings. They went and found a magic user named Maud, who was this short woman with black curly hair and this very big jacket and a very big hat. On top of that, they found Varna, who was a thief with a bow, and both of them proved very useful in the coming fight, especially since Maud was 3rd level and Varna was 2nd level. I should have divided the XP among them evenly, but Saltmarsh already has so little experience points in that first half of the adventure. You're going to have to do the Sea Ghost if you want to get a level out of this. You really have to use the Sea Ghost, and you have to put extra. I think I'm going to put extra treasure on the Sea Ghost to try and get them up to level 2 so they can get more experience points. It's not fun dying in one hit, because then that death feels out of the player's control, as opposed to a death where you're like, this happened and it sucks, but I understand why it happened and it's sort of my fault. So yes, Owen went and ate lunch and just kind of hung out, and they all took a rest, which only gives you I think a D3 hit points, and Grand was the only one who was injured. So they go back to the house, and they want to set up an ambush. They do some sort of scouting. They want to set up an ambush. So they open the secret door where they know the bad guys are. And the first thing that happens is they hear movement in there, and they're like, okay, let's set up an ambush. And meanwhile, the bad guys are also setting up an ambush. So it's basically these two guys who set up an ambush. They're both sitting there with their bows drawn, and nothing's happening. And I'm like, well, I need to do something, or these guys are going to sit here and do nothing. So I have the illusionist cast invisibility on himself, and then through the secret door, I have them make a check, or I have the party make a check to see what they hear. They don't hear anything, so the illusionist then comes in and they cast Color Spray, which Color Spray in Old School Essentials, depending on the hit dice of the creature that you're attacking, it just causes people to go unconscious. And so this guy casts Color Spray, and then everybody who he didn't knock unconscious just immediately lays into him. And I thought you would have more hit points and more survivability than that, but I was wrong, because the party rolled really good, and Varna and Maud rolled really good. It helped that Maud had a magic missile that they cast, which automatically hit, and they dealt basically, I think, max damage on that. And this 3rd level illusionist, who's like 13 hit points, is just gonna fall over after that. He's dead. So they took that guy out. Oh well, that's fine. And then they begin to move into the rest of the room, and Grand and Verve both are like, can we pick up this bed frame and use it as a big shield? And I was like, yeah, you can do that. So I gave them, I think, I gave them some decent partial cover for that. And so they charge into this ambush, but they have this huge bed frame in front of them. So we roll initiative, and the combat is incredibly fun. I'm not going to give you the play-by-play, but Verve got to reveal themselves as a Dragon Knight by using their breath weapon to kill a gnoll and damage one of the bandits, and they consistently, the party rolled really good, and consistently the bandits rolled really bad. And I've been using fantasy grounds. I haven't been using the the modify dice roll feature on Fantasy Grounds to fudge my rolls, because I feel like it's in keeping with the OSR spirit that what happens happens. What happens on the die rolls happens on the die rolls. I can modify what something does to make it easier or harder, sort of nerf or buff as I need to, but what's rolled is rolled, and that lends to the reality of the game, and I think that's a good idea to keep going with. So the party takes everybody out. They made a deal with the town that they got to keep any of the contraband that they were smuggling and then sell it back, paying an import duty. So they do that, and I think we divided up the gold, and everybody's now at like 800 experience points. People have a shit ton of gold as well, which I think we're at the point where they need to start figuring out where to keep their money, because you can't walk around with 800 gold on you. It's really fucking heavy. The game ended with everybody being nice and happy, and they got a bunch of money. But I'm realizing now that this adventure, they're still, most of the people there are still a good 1,000 or over 1,000 gold away from leveling up. There are 1,000 experience points away from leveling up. So I think I do need to put more onto the Sea Ghost if they end up going down that adventure path. But they're going to have a couple of days of downtime, which will be good to heal. It'll be good for Grand to pursue that little side quest. And I'm going to have to ask everybody in the middle of this week and be like, hey, what are you going to do? So I can prepare for that, because I have no clue what you guys are going to do. There's going to be a little bit of downtime before the next part of the adventure. Tell me what you guys want to do. If you don't want to do anything, that's fine. I can just prep the next part of the adventure, and we can do that. I'm really excited to keep going. Everybody seemed to have a lot of fun with combat last night, which is great. But I think they only had that much fun because they didn't die terribly. Nobody died in that combat. We had a couple of close calls with some goblins, but it was goblins and bandits kind of whiffing at each other over and over again until the goblins got a lucky hit, or the knight or the barbarian came in and fucked them up and helped the goblins. So I'm really excited to continue, and I'll try to keep these videos up to date. I hope I can do that. Thanks for listening. If you are out there listening, I'm your biggest fan. Bye.